For years, she preached feminism while using me as her financial support, ignoring my needs until I left her with no excuses, no money, and her perfect image crumbled in front of everyone. My name is Andres. I met Claudia, my wife, when I was in my third year of community college. I was studying construction management and working part-time at a building supply warehouse to pay for tuition. She, on the other hand, was in her final year at the state university, pursuing a double major in gender studies and business administration. She was an impressive woman, way out of my league. But somehow she noticed me while I was delivering materials for the new student lounge on her campus. Looking back, I should have noticed the signs from the beginning. On our first date, I took her to a small, family-run Italian restaurant. Nothing fancy, but the food was excellent. She commented that it was quaint, and then spent half the night talking about an exclusive rooftop restaurant where important people gathered. Still, she laughed at my jokes, touched my arm when she spoke, and honestly, she was the most beautiful woman who had ever paid attention to me. We dated for 2 years before getting married. During that time, everything revolved around her professional aspirations. She said she was going to break barriers, that she would become a powerful executive. I supported her in everything. I worked extra hours to pay for her master's degree applications. I helped her practice for interviews. I felt genuinely proud to be with someone so determined. We got married when we were 25. And after that, everything started to change, not all at once, but slowly and steadily, like water wearing away a stone. Those professional ambitions faded, giving way to expensive tastes and an attitude of complete nonchalance. Her first job after graduating was as an administrator at a small marketing agency. She quit after 3 months because, according to her, her boss didn't value her potential and gave her tasks, beneath her education, like making coffee for meetings. Meanwhile, I went from being a laborer to a crew foreman, and then to an assistant project manager. Claudia bounced between receptionist jobs that never lasted more than a few months. It was always the same excuse: the boss was sexist, the environment was toxic, or they didn't value work-life balance. I, on the other hand, worked more than 60 hours a week. I'd come home exhausted, my body aching and my hands dirty, even though I was already in management. 4 years ago, we bought our first house. Well, actually, I bought it. I put down the down payment and took on the mortgage. It was a simple house, 3 bedrooms, in a quiet area with good schools. I was thinking about the future, maybe starting a family someday. But Claudia immediately started talking about renovations. The kitchen was outdated, the master bathroom needed a complete overhaul because she deserved a jacuzzi tub. At first, it didn't bother me. I thought she just wanted to improve our home until I realized she had no intention of doing anything herself. That was what expensive contractors were for, by the way, as if her husband, who manages construction projects for a living, couldn't handle it on weekends. By the time we celebrated our 5th wedding anniversary, I was managing large real estate developments, handling multi-million-dollar budgets, and coordinating dozens of workers. My salary had doubled since the beginning of our marriage, but instead of saving, Claudia saw it as an excuse to spend even more. A typical day would start with my alarm at 5 a.m., a little exercise to relieve stress, and by 7 a.m., I was already on site. The rest of the day was about solving problems, mediating between contractors, dealing with permits, and ensuring deadlines were met. I would return home at 7 p.m., worn out, with back pain, migraines from staring at blueprints, and my fingers still stiff from work. All I wanted was a hot meal and to feel like my wife was happy to see me. But no. Claudia would usually be sprawled on the leather sofa, which I also paid for, watching TV or scrolling through social media, surrounded by shopping bags from stores where a t-shirt cost as much as a laborer earns in a day. The house was a disaster: dirty dishes, clothes thrown everywhere, fast food containers in the trash. When I asked about dinner, her answer would be, "I ordered food on an app. It'll be here in half an hour. Can you transfer me your share on your phone?" She would say this to me while sitting there, not working, with no income, in a house I completely maintained. And yet, she still expected me to pay her for half of the food she had ordered. The first few times, I just transferred the money. I didn't have the energy to argue. But every time I did it, I felt a tighter knot in my stomach. Intimacy also became scarce. At the beginning of our marriage, we were intimate regularly. Nothing out of the ordinary, but a healthy intimate life. Over time, that dwindled to once a month, if that, and always on her terms. She was only affectionate when she wanted to ask for something expensive. If she ever cooked, she acted as if she had accomplished a great feat. "I spent hours making this pasta, Andres," she'd say. But it was boxed pasta with jarred sauce and frozen meatballs. It took her 20 minutes, tops. My mother, who worked part-time as a school secretary, managed to put a hot meal on the table every day when I was a kid. I didn't expect a 1950s housewife. I know how to cook, I know how to clean. I grew up with 2 brothers. But while I worked 12 hours and drove another hour, she spent the day watching shopping channels or having lunch with her friends, who also either didn't work or lived off family inheritances. The breaking point was near, though I didn't know it yet. It all exploded on a Friday in July. I had just closed a huge contract that would mean a considerable bonus, possibly 5 figures. It was a mixed-use project in the city center, and I managed to complete it under budget, despite supply chain issues affecting the entire industry. That same day, my boss called me into his office, shook my hand, and told me they were considering promoting me to senior project manager. That position would come with a 6-figure salary. I was driving home, ecstatic. For someone who had started as a laborer with only a technical degree, this was like making it to the big leagues. I stopped to buy a dessert, excited about the idea of celebrating with Claudia. Maybe we could reconnect a little. I thought this good news might remind us of what we were as a couple. I got home early, around 6:30 p.m., and as I walked in, I said, "Honey, I'm home. I have incredible news." I found her in the living room, as usual, staring at her phone. She glanced up briefly. "Oh, there's no food. I didn't think you'd be home so early." I showed her the dessert. I thought we could celebrate. The downtown project went well, and they're considering me for the senior manager position. She put her phone down. "Oh, that's nice. What does that mean, exactly?" I explained about the bonus, the potential promotion, the raise. As I spoke, I could see her mentally calculating how much more she could spend. Not once did she say she was proud of me or acknowledge the effort. The only thing she said was, "Oh good, because there's a feminist panel in Chicago this weekend. All the important figures will be there. Tickets are like $500. Plus, we'd need a hotel, but with your upcoming bonus." She left the sentence unfinished. "This weekend? I was hoping we could celebrate together. Maybe go out to dinner at Giovanni's. That Italian restaurant where we had our first date was still my favorite in the city." She frowned. "Giovanni's? That place is so basic. Besides, this panel is important for my connections. They'll be talking about the modern female experience in the corporate world." I couldn't help it. "And what do you know about the corporate world? You haven't held a job for more than 3 months in years." Her face changed instantly. Her gaze turned sharp. "Excuse me? That is incredibly insensitive. Do you know how toxic a work environment can be for an educated woman? The microaggressions alone are enough." I interrupted her, putting the dessert on the living room table. "We need to talk about how things are going." She rolled her eyes dramatically. "About what now?" "I'm trying to relax." "About this," I said, gesturing to the mess. About our marriage. I feel like I'm carrying everything while you just drift along. The look she gave me could have frozen hell. Excuse me? Are you seriously bringing up the woman does the chores thing? I didn't marry you to be your domestic employee or your cook. If you want someone to clean up after you, hire someone with that big, manly salary of yours. I almost choked. This isn't about gender roles, Claudia. It's about being partners. I work my ass off every day, and you contribute nothing. Not money, not effort. Not even a shred of appreciation. She sat up straight on the sofa, her eyes blazing. I contribute nothing. I contribute a lot. I manage our social life. I maintain connections with people who could boost your career. Do you have any idea how exhausting it is to be a woman today? The emotional labor alone is. Emotional labor? I cut her off again. I have co-workers who risk their lives to support their families and still come home and help out. This isn't about you being a woman, it's about you being lazy and entitled. Lazy, she repeated, raising her voice. You don't know what I do all day. Just because I'm not playing in the dirt like your construction buddies doesn't mean I don't work. I'm maintaining our image, our social status. I laughed, without a trace of humor. The only image you're maintaining is on Instagram, where you pretend to be an empowered woman while spending money you didn't earn. She stood up. Her face red with fury. You're threatened by a strong woman who knows her worth. My father would never have spoken to my mother like that. Your father is a corporate lawyer who makes millions. And your mother, besides raising you and your sisters, ran a foundation. Our situation is not comparable. It was a low blow, I admit. Bringing up her wealthy family. They had never fully accepted me, the blue-collar guy who wasn't good enough for their princess. They paid for our wedding, yes, but they made it clear they thought Claudia was settling. Sometimes I wondered if she believed it too. I can't believe you're attacking me like this on a Friday night when all I wanted was to rest. This is borderline abusive, she said, grabbing her phone before storming into the bedroom and slamming the door. I was left alone in the messy living room. The unopened dessert on the table seemed to mock me. I went to the kitchen. Got a soda from the fridge, and sat on the back patio, looking at the garden I had landscaped myself over many weekends while Claudia attended her endless self-care appointments. As night fell, something shifted inside me. This wasn't just a rough patch or a bad day. This was my life, working to the bone to support a lifestyle she didn't appreciate, didn't help maintain, and seemed to despise. For the first time, I allowed myself to honestly consider if this was what I wanted for the next 40 years. The answer was so clear it took my breath away. Not a chance. I slept on the couch that night. The next morning, Claudia was already gone. Her typical passive-aggressive way of punishing me. I received a credit card notification on my phone. $600 spent at Nordstrom at 8:15 a.m. The message was obvious: if you make me angry, you will pay. But she didn't know that I was done paying. Over the weekend, she barely spoke to me. Except to make sarcastic comments in the few moments she was home. She spent most of Saturday with her friends. When she returned, she was carrying shopping bags and made sure I saw every designer brand before taking them up to the bedroom. I guess if you think I'm worthless, you won't mind me buying these shoes to feel better, she'd say, showing me her phone screen with another purchase of hundreds of dollars made with my card. On Sunday morning, she announced she was going to brunch with her friends and that I shouldn't wait up for her. Maybe they'd spend the day at a spa. I just nodded as my mind began to form a plan. Something I learned from managing construction sites is that you never tear down a wall without first knowing what's behind it or what will happen when you remove it. First, you assess, you plan. And then you execute. That's how I was going to approach my marriage. While Claudia was out spending more money with her friends, all a mix of rich family girls who had never worked and others who did exactly what she did. Live off their husbands while talking about empowerment. I sat down at my desk and thoroughly reviewed our finances. I hadn't done it in months. What I discovered turned my stomach. We had less than $5,000 in savings. Despite my good salary, we had accumulated over $30,000 in credit card debt, most of it from Claudia's purchases and treatments. She had even opened a Nordstrom card without telling me. She had maxed it out at $7,500 and was only paying the minimum from our joint account. I reviewed the bank statements for the last 6 months. On average, Claudia was spending nearly $6,000 a month on clothes, restaurants, Uber Eats, Sephora, beauty salons, wellness treatments, whatever that means, and more clothes. I, on the other hand, hadn't bought new work boots in a year, even though I needed them. I was still using the same worn-out gym bag from college. That fishing trip with my dad that I had postponed so many times was always pushed back with the same phrase, "We don't have extra money right now, honey." That Sunday night. Instead of confronting her when she came home half-drunk from brunch, I sat at the computer while she relaxed in the bathtub with the expensive bath bombs I had given her for Christmas and began to make some financial changes. The first thing I did was transfer most of the money from our joint account to a new account that only I could access. I left just enough to cover the mortgage and utilities for the next month. Then I canceled all her credit cards, except one, and set a weekly limit of $200. I also set up notifications for any purchase over $50. I took the opportunity to check the call and message history on our cell phone plan and discovered she had been constantly texting an unknown number, often late into the night. I didn't read the messages at that moment. I didn't want to. But I memorized the number. When she came out of the bathroom after almost an hour and looked at her phone, she exploded like a bomb. She appeared in the living room, wrapped only in a towel, brandishing her phone. "What the hell did you do?" she screamed, shaking the screen with notifications of declined transactions. I didn't get up from the couch. I was watching a baseball game. I just looked her straight in the eye. "I adjusted your spending to align with what you contribute to this household," I said calmly. Her face went through a sequence of emotions before settling on fury. "You can't do this. This is financial abuse. I'm going to call my sister's lawyer friend. She works on women's rights cases." I was surprised by how calm I felt as I responded. "Go ahead. Explain to a judge how paying all the bills while you spend thousands on handbags is considered abuse. And while you're at it, also tell her why you haven't managed to keep a job for more than 3 months in years. You're being a controller," she muttered through clenched teeth. "A real man wouldn't treat his wife like this." Then I stood up, and since I'm almost a foot taller than her, I looked down at her. "No. A real man wouldn't let his wife walk all over him like you've done. If you want to live like a queen, start acting like a partner." For the first time since I'd known her, Claudia was speechless. Her mouth opened, then closed, but she said nothing. She turned around and slammed the bathroom door so hard a picture fell off the wall. She slept in the guest room that night. I, on the other hand, slept better than I had in a long time. The next morning, before I left for work, I left her a note on the kitchen counter. It said, "I have established a budget that fairly reflects our income and expenses. Your card has a weekly limit of $200 for your personal spending. If you need more, get a job. If you decide to contribute to this household, either financially or by taking care of certain tasks, we can discuss adjusting the budget. It is non-negotiable." That afternoon, when I returned, I found the note torn to pieces on the table. Claudia wasn't there. She didn't come back until I was already asleep. Thus began our silent war. The following weeks were revealing. Without free access to my money, the real Claudia came to light. She continued to fill her social media with posts about female empowerment, independence, and self-esteem, but behind closed doors. She never stopped complaining that she could no longer buy whatever she wanted. One morning, she approached me, saying, "My friends invited me to lunch at Westfield's. That was an expensive place downtown where they charged $30 for avocado toast. What am I supposed to tell them? That my husband is a cheapskate who won't let me go? Tell them whatever you want." I replied, packing my homemade lunch into a bag. "Or get a job and pay for it yourself." "A job?" she asked as if I had suggested she lick a stone. "You know what I think about the capitalist system and its exploitative nature." I had to hold back a laugh. This was coming from the same woman who had 13 designer bags in her closet. Apparently, exploitation didn't bother her when she was receiving the benefits, but it did when she had to earn them. During those days, she tried everything, crying, screaming, making me feel guilty. Even trying to seduce me after weeks of no physical contact. When nothing worked, she started telling people I was abusing her by imposing a budget. Her feminist friends began to bombard me with messages, accusing me of being controlling and sexist. One even claimed I felt threatened by a strong woman. I laughed to myself. There was nothing strong about throwing tantrums because your husband expects you to act like an adult. One night, I came home to find Claudia and 3 of her friends waiting for me in the living room. A sort of intervention. There was Natalia, divorced twice and a fan of posting that all men are trash, Lucia, who lived off her parents' money while running a chaotic wellness coaching business, and Veronica, a successful real estate agent, yes, but who had been cheating on her husband for years. Claudia had confessed that to me once over drinks and then asked me to keep it a secret. "Andres," Natalia began as soon as I walked in. "We're worried about Claudia. She's told us you're exerting financial control over her." I put my lunchbox on the counter without even taking off my boots. "What an interesting version of events," I said. "She has a right to financial independence," Lucia intervened. "What you're doing is a classic form of abuse." I looked at them one by one, then at Claudia, who had that smug expression of someone who thinks they've won. "You're right," I replied. "Claudia deserves financial independence, and I encourage her to get it. To find a job, earn her own money, and spend it however she wants. That is independence." Veronica, at least, had the decency to look uncomfortable. "It's not that simple, Andres. Marriage is a partnership. The money belongs to both of you." "That's funny," I said. "It only seems to be both of our money when she's spending it. But when I'm the one working 60 hours a week to earn it, that's taken for granted. Tell me something, if I quit my job and stayed home relaxing while Claudia supported us, would you be here defending my right to shared money?" They were quiet for a moment. Then Claudia intervened, her voice trembling, though I could now tell it was fake. "You're twisting everything. I contribute too, the emotional labor, for example." "What emotional labor?" I interrupted. "Because from where I'm standing, I go to work, come home, cook for myself, do my own laundry, and I don't get a shred of emotional support from you. So please, explain to your friends what exactly this work you do is." The silence that followed was brutal. Finally, Natalia stood up, grabbing her designer handbag. Probably bought with her second ex-husband's alimony. "We're not going to sit here and watch you verbally abuse our friend. Come on, Claudia. You can stay at my place." I shrugged. "Perfect. But you might want to pack a bag. A one-bedroom apartment gets small very quickly." They all left, and Claudia barely stopped to pack some clothes and her essentials. I closed the door behind them. And for the first time in months, I enjoyed the silence in my home again. The real shakeup came a month later. That day, I came home early from work because a concrete delivery was cancelled due to a problem with the supplier. As I walked in, I found Claudia rummaging through my side of the closet. She jumped when she saw me, a look of complete guilt on her face. In her hand was my grandfather's watch, an antique Omega he had given me before he died. It wasn't worth a fortune. But it was the only valuable thing he left me. "What are you doing with that?" I asked, with a calmness that hid a deep anger. She immediately straightened up, shifting from guilt to a defiant attitude. "I was just looking at it," she said. "You were trying to take it," I replied. "Fine, I was going to sell it on eBay," she finally admitted. "I needed money for my hair appointment, and you're being ridiculous with this budget. I have standards to maintain." I stared at her, speechless. After all these years of supporting her, of building a life together, now she wanted to sell a family heirloom just to dye her hair. "Give me the watch," I demanded, my voice tense but firm, holding out my hand. She hesitated, let out a huff of annoyance, and finally handed it over. "You're overreacting. It's just a watch. And you're stealing. That watch is the only thing I have left of my grandfather. But that doesn't matter to you, does it? The only thing that matters is you." "Please," she scoffed. "Don't be so dramatic." That same night, I took the watch and everything else of value in the house and put it in a safe deposit box at the bank. I had been sleeping in the guest room for weeks, and lying there, I understood something I had been avoiding: our marriage was beyond repair. The woman I married was gone, or perhaps she never existed. In her place was only someone selfish, superficial, and disconnected from everything we had built. But I wasn't going to just leave. Not after so many years of her using me. If this was going to end, it would be on my terms. About 6 weeks had passed since I started the new financial structure, and the effects were beginning to show. Claudia could no longer maintain her perfect image. Without money for the hair salon. Her roots were visible, her nails were unkempt, and her designer clothes were on a more frequent rotation because she couldn't afford to buy new ones. She tried staying at Natalia's. But that lasted barely a week. She returned, muttering that they needed some space. I guess Natalia's hospitality lasted as long as Claudia could afford to pay for dinners out and wine nights. One night, from the bathroom, thinking the sound of the shower would cover her voice, Claudia was on the phone. She didn't know that the bathroom vent carried every word directly to the guest room where I slept. "It's so humiliating," she whispered, convinced I couldn't hear her. "He acts like I'm a gold digger. After everything I've done for this marriage." I had to stifle a laugh. What exactly had she sacrificed? Her career as a compulsive shopper? "No, I've talked to him," she continued. "He just doesn't get it. Being a wife is a full-time job. Emotional labor should be paid." There it was again, the damn emotional labor. I had looked it up online when she first mentioned it. It refers to the invisible effort of managing the household, remembering dates, organizing gatherings, etc. But Claudia did none of that. I was the one who remembered her mother's birthday, who called the technician to check the furnace, who replaced the toilet paper before it ran out. "I can't just leave like this," she said. "My name isn't on the deed, and I have nowhere to go. My parents already said they won't bail me out again after that credit card disaster." Credit card disaster. First time I was hearing about it. But then I understood why her parents were so distant at Christmas and gave her lectures on responsible finances. I know, she sighed. "I'm working on him. He'll give in eventually. Men like him always do. They feel guilty. I just have to pretend I'm trying. Make him believe I'm making an effort." At that moment, I decided to start documenting everything. Photos of the house before and after I went to work to prove nothing was being done. I kept receipts from purchases, invoices, any expense I paid for a loan. I even recorded conversations when she demanded money and refused to look for a job. Spiteful, maybe, but I had a feeling I would need proof when everything blew up. The final straw was a call from the bank about suspicious activity on our joint card. Claudia had tried to apply for another card using my name, a clear case of identity theft. When I confronted her, she reacted as if it were nothing. "It's not a big deal. We're married," she snapped. "Didn't you say in your vows, what's mine is yours? And I also promised to love and care for you," I replied. "Funny how you only remember the parts that suit you." That same night, I called a lawyer. The next day, I opened a new account at a different bank, had my paycheck direct deposited there, and left just enough in the joint account to cover the house expenses. I also installed a small, visible camera in the living room, right next to our wedding photo. A bitter irony. When Claudia saw it, she angrily asked what it was. I answered bluntly, "I want to make sure nothing else goes missing." She went crazy. She talked about invasion of privacy, of broken trust. I just looked at her and reminded her, "You tried to steal my identity to get a credit card. Trust is earned." During that same period, I discovered she had been messaging her ex-boyfriend from college, the rich kid her parents approved of, the one who left her in her final year. She was complaining to him about how unhappy she was, how I didn't understand her, and said that maybe she had married the wrong man. I didn't confront her. I just added it to the file. What she didn't know was that I had already had my first meeting with a lawyer specializing in contentious divorces, a relentless professional, used to defending men in situations like mine. She explained the process, told me to keep gathering evidence, and not to leave the house. According to her, the worst mistake men make is leaving before the trial begins. "Stay, document. And don't do anything that could be interpreted as abandonment," she warned me. That's what I did. I stayed. I watched. I recorded everything. I waited. It didn't take long for Claudia to realize her tactics were no longer working. Neither the crying, nor the reproaches, nor the manipulation had any effect. So she changed her strategy. She pretended to be nice. Suddenly, she was trying to make dinner, even if it ended up burnt or barely edible. She started doing small chores around the house. She wasn't good at it, but at least she was trying. For the first time in months, she even initiated intimacy. I politely declined her advances. I wasn't going to fall into that trap. And to be honest, the idea of getting close to someone who had so clearly shown their true colors was repulsive to me. The mask would slip as soon as something didn't go her way. Once, after she cleaned the kitchen, I pointed out that the spoiled food was still in the refrigerator. Her reaction was immediate. "At least I tried. God, nothing is ever good enough for you." Meanwhile, I was starting to regain control of my life. I got up every day at 5 a.m. to go to the gym before work. I had lost over 15 pounds of stress weight and was starting to feel like myself again. I reconnected with friends she had pushed away because she didn't consider them suitable for our image, friends from my construction team she considered too simple. My friend from high school who was now a cop, even my cousin who lived in an RV but was one of the most genuine people I knew. At the same time, I was quietly moving forward with the divorce proceedings. My lawyer already had all the necessary documentation, proof of Claudia's financial irresponsibility, evidence that she had contributed nothing to the household, her attempts at identity theft, and even compromising messages with her ex. In our state, assets are divided 50-50. But my lawyer was confident we could justify an unequal distribution given the circumstances. The house was in my name, I had bought it before the marriage, and although we lived in it together, Claudia never contributed to the mortgage payments. My retirement funds were similarly protected. The issue of debt was more delicate, as much of it was acquired during the marriage, although almost all of it was related to her expenses. One night, in what would be our last week living together, Claudia approached me with what seemed like a sincere apology. Her eyes were teary, and her voice was choked with emotion. Andres, I've been a horrible person. You were right about everything. I've been selfish and inconsiderate. I took advantage of your hard work and your generosity. Can we try again? I miss what we had. I'll change. I'll get a job. I'll be better. For a moment, I almost believed her. Her expression was convincing. But then I saw her phone, which she had left face up on the living room table, light up with a notification from a dating app. She was already looking for her next source of income. I miss you too, I said, faking it. Maybe we can work it out. The look of relief on her face was almost comical. Really? Oh, Andres. That's wonderful. I promise this time will be different. She hugged me, and I returned the embrace coldly. We should talk about how to move forward, I suggested. Yes, of course. Whatever you want. For starters, I think you should look for a job. Something stable, with benefits, if possible. At this point, anything will do. Even sales or customer service would be a good start. I watched her face carefully. I saw that brief flash of disgust before she composed herself. Yes, I've been looking at administrative positions. My business degree should be useful. Perfect, I said. We could also make a list of chores to divide the household responsibilities. Another small gesture of annoyance. That makes sense. Though you know I'm not good at cleaning, I never really learned. I can teach you, I replied with an empty smile. It's not that hard. The conversation continued in that tone. With me proposing reasonable cohabitation behaviors and her reluctantly agreeing, clearly annoyed. Finally, I told her I was tired and headed to the guest room. Could you sleep in our room tonight? She suggested with a look that at another time would have been tempting. If you want, I think we should go slow, I replied. Rebuild trust before we get intimate again. Of course. Whatever you need. I closed the door to the room and barely smiled. She was convinced she was winning. She had no idea what was coming. 2 days after her emotional apology. I took the day off from work. I told her I had meetings until late and that she shouldn't wait up for me. She believed me. I had never lied to her before. She was planning to go out shopping with the money she had earned by cleaning the house well for the first time. She assured me it would be basic things, nothing expensive. I believed her and even increased her weekly limit a little as a reward. In reality, what I wanted was to make sure she wasn't home while I executed the final part of my plan. At 9 a.m. The movers arrived, 4 guys from my worksite, happy to earn some extra cash on their day off. For the past week, I had been packing my belongings little by little. Taking them in my truck to my new apartment during my lunch breaks. I told them to only take what was marked with blue tape. The rest had to stay. I was very meticulous. Marking only the furniture that belonged to me, what I had bought before the marriage or what was a family heirloom. The TV in the living room was hers, the sofa she insisted on buying also stayed. But the leather armchair that had been my father's, my workbench, the weights, and the bike, those were coming with me. I already had a new apartment near work. Paid in advance for 3 months with the money I had saved without her knowing. It was nothing fancy, just a 1-bedroom apartment with a balcony overlooking a park, but it was mine. And best of all, she had no idea it existed. While the guys worked, I checked each room one last time. In what was our bedroom, I opened the closet and saw the clothes she had bought me, designer shirts I never liked. Expensive shoes that hurt my feet. I left them all. By noon, everything was loaded. I did a final walkthrough of the house. I was filled with a strange mix of sadness and freedom. 7 years of my life in that place. Not all of it was bad memories. There were good times at the beginning. But it was time to close that chapter. In the kitchen. I left 3 things on the counter, the divorce papers, already signed by me. Next to them, I left a USB drive with all the evidence I had collected about her conduct and a letter in which I explained in detail the reasons why our marriage had come to an end. It wasn't a letter filled with anger or resentment. It was direct, clear, laying out how her actions, her attitude, and her decisions had slowly eroded everything we had once built together. I closed that letter by wishing her the best and hoping she could find what she was really looking for. Before leaving that house for the last time, I paused for a moment in front of a photo of our wedding that still rested on the shelf. We looked happy, excited. Where did we go wrong? With a sigh, I left the house key and my ring next to the divorce papers. I closed the door behind me and left. I turned off my phone, got in my truck, and drove straight to my friend Samuel's cabin. 3 hours away. He had offered it to me as a refuge when I told him what was about to happen. "You're going to need a place to clear your head, where she can't find you right away," he said. And he was right. I spent that weekend fishing in the lake, drinking by the fire, and sleeping like I hadn't in years. No social media. No calls or messages, just tranquility and the certainty that I was finally regaining control of my life. When I turned on my phone on Sunday night, I had 87 missed calls, 134 text messages, and 23 voicemails, all from Claudia or her friends. I only listened to one, in which she was crying uncontrollably. "Andres, please, don't do this to me. I have nowhere to go. The landlord says I have 30 days to vacate because the lease was in your name and you cancelled it. I can't afford this place alone. Call me back." The truth is, although she told her friends the house was ours, I was actually renting it while I saved up to buy a home of my own someday, a home I now understood I would never have shared with her. The landlord, a kind elderly man, agreed to end the lease with me and gave Claudia a month to find another place. I checked some of the messages, each one more desperate than the last. "Andres, answer me. Where are you? Why are you doing this to me? At least tell me where my things are. If you don't answer, I'm calling the police. The landlord came and says we're being kicked out. What did you do? My lawyer says what you did is illegal. Please, don't leave me alone. I have no one to turn to." The worst came from her friends. The messages were full of threats and insults. "You're a piece of trash. We're going to report you for abuse. You'll regret this. Real men don't abandon their wives. We always knew you weren't good enough for her." I blocked them one by one and then texted my lawyer. "It's done. She found the documents. She'll probably contact you tomorrow." Over the next week, the messages continued from unknown numbers. She was using her friends' phones, as I had blocked her. They went from pleas to warnings, then back to begging. One of her most militant friends stopped texting me after my lawyer sent a cease and desist letter. It seems their bravery ran out when faced with real consequences. 2 weeks after I left, I received one last message. It was different from all the others. "Andres, I get it now. I screwed up. You were right about everything. This week I applied to 3 jobs. I'm staying with Natalia. But she already hinted that I have to pay some rent. I didn't know everything you did for me. I took you for granted, and I'm so sorry. If you could just help me until I get back on my feet. Even just lend me money for a deposit on a small place, I'll pay you back. I swear. I've learned my lesson." I only replied once. "It seems you're finally learning what it means to be an independent adult. Congratulations on your personal growth. The divorce will be final in 60 days. Don't contact me again." And then I blocked her number for good. What came next was more or less predictable. My lawyer was impeccable. Using all the evidence I had gathered to dismantle every argument presented by the lawyer Claudia hastily hired, They tried to argue that she deserved half of everything for having supported my career and cared for the home. The judge literally laughed when he saw the photos of the state of the house and the proof that Claudia had spent more at the beauty salon in a year than she had contributed to the household during the entire marriage. We finally reached a settlement. I took on the debts she had accumulated, about $25,000, of which I had already paid a part, and in return, she waived any right to my retirement savings and future income. She got to keep her car, which I had finished paying off but was in her name, her clothes, and some furniture. I got the most valuable thing, my freedom. It's been 6 months since then. The divorce was settled faster than expected. Apparently. When you have proof that the other party tried to steal your identity, judges tend not to be very sympathetic. I bought a simple house near my work. Nothing fancy. A single-story house with 2 bedrooms and a small yard. I paid for it with the bonus I finally received and the savings I had been secretly stashing away for years. It's a quiet place, always tidy. With no decorative pillows or cheesy signs, just comfortable furniture and the freedom to leave my work boots wherever I want. I'm dating someone, but with no commitments. I met a nurse named Carolina at a barbecue Samuel hosted. She works 12-hour shifts at the hospital, knows how to change the oil in her car, and on our first date, she offered to split the bill. I don't know where it's going, and for now, I'm not worried. I'm not looking to fill a void or compensate for the past. I'm just allowing myself to live calmly, without having to answer to someone who never valued what I did. I've rediscovered the pleasure of coming home to silence, the joy of cooking something simple just for myself, and the peace of sleeping knowing that no one is spying on my phone or faking affection to get something in return. I've taken up hobbies I had abandoned for years, carpentry. Long walks with no destination. I even started writing a journal, something I never thought I'd do. Not out of nostalgia, but so I never forget what I lived through, what I allowed, and above all, what I learned. Claudia is still out of my life. I don't know what she's up to, and I'm not interested in knowing. Sometimes I hear rumors through mutual acquaintances, but I let them pass. I have no space in my mind for the past. Everything I want is here, in this present that I'm rebuilding, brick by brick, without pretense, without embellishments, without masks. And for the first time in a long time, that's enough.